Now, already you can hear, here's a resourceful woman. You know, I need some new strategies. Oh dear, I appear to have a potentially terminal diagnosis. I need some new strategies. You know, that is being resourceful in my book.
For me, it wasn't about, it was about how to live my life with my diagnosis. So I was looking to live, and I was also, if I wasn't going to live for long, living in as myself. It was like, I can remember saying to someone right at the beginning, I just want to be myself and live in the same way as I've done before.
Now, what do you think this has to do with confidence? It's everything to do with confidence, isn't it? Because the primary thing that I hear was driving your decisions was what you're going to live with your diagnosis. You're not fighting it. And whatever the length of time I have, I'm going to live as myself. So you're going to just check in and be you. Okay. So you made those decisions.
Yeah.
What happened then?
I think all through my training and the life I was living then, I sort of developed different strategies. And one of the big things I really, I think I did struggle with for quite a while, was uncertainty and being able to see the future. And what I came to sort of remind Ian on was I ended up on this stage about 7 years ago in a timeline exercise, and questions were coming out, and I said, I can't see the future. And I remember you saying, I'm not surprised.
And what was this that you had here?
I just couldn't see past there.
Now, for those of you familiar, you know, this will make a lot of sense. If you're not familiar, how we structure time is a fascinating thing, and part of how we do it is spatially. And there is, if you will, a line of time that we have available to us. And how we understand that enables us to see or not what may be possible for us. And if your future is right here, guess what? It's the opposite of what we were doing, isn't it? There's no, oh, okay. And there certainly isn't any of this. You know, think about a year planner, you know, Sasco year planner does. Big picture, you can see it all, which is just about the opposite of this. And it makes a lot of sense for me because I worked with quite a lot of guys who were HIV positive, and I did it, originally I did it when being HIV positive was a death sentence. And what was so fascinating was very frequently there was no future. That those guys just could not conceive of a future, and I would actually reconstruct one with them. And I'd often do it by being quite paradoxical. I'd say, so, you mean I'm not going to see you after lunch? And I'd do this, and I needed to kind of get in there and say, you know, stop messing around. And they say, yes, of course. Okay, well, I'm going to be coming in tomorrow. Will I see you being wheeled out? And they go, I'll be here. Okay. End of the week? Do you think we might be able to put something in the diary end of the week? And so it would go on. And I'd say, well, okay, what about next week? Want to go to the movies next week? Sure. So we begin to actually construct that future again. As you say, anyway, so it was like 7 years ago or something. There we were in another room, on another platform. What happened?
It was a really powerful exercise for me, because in some ways I just managed to actually alter the way I was seeing things. And I remember sort of having a sort of timeline going off to the right, and I'd read things about people who tended to survive, and that they actually had some kind of compelling future for themselves, and that was part of my thinking as well. And it just sort of opened up. I mean, none of it was magic, it was all very much a process, but that was a big shift that day.
Okay. And you were telling me something at the break, I've just remembered. What did you say? About perspective. Yeah. After one session, I came up to you and I think I got quite tearful. And I was saying, but the medical diagnosis is really bleak. And you just said to me something about, what other perspective might there be? And I went away and I thought about that for ages. And actually, you just saying that to me, I suppose because you were my trainer and I respected you, I took it as being, well, he thinks there might be a future. So I took that from you, and I also began to think, okay,
I may not live for 10 years. It is about perspective, though, and there may be something that I can do in terms of my attitude and beliefs that may impact. Who knows? But let's go for it and let's see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's something here about, as Jill says, I was her trainer. That was significant. It's a relationship of significance. So are there going to be people who can empower you? Are you the person who can empower someone else? Simply to conceive of other possibilities. You're not making promises. You know, I did not lay hands on Jill and pronounce her healed and so forth. It was actually, you know, a very simple inquiry. Mm. But that inquiry was enough to open things up. Mm. Mm. So here's an example of, you know, when the earthquake happens, how do you respond? And for me, what I would take is a couple of things away from this. Firstly, is your earthquake as big as this earthquake? It may be. But if it isn't, then perspective and proportion is going to be kind of important here. And all that jazz about, you know, there are people who are worse off than me and so forth, that does actually have relevance, because it's about keeping a sense of proportion. Another thing is you begin to engage proactively. Jill's talking about living with your diagnosis. Mm. You're not in denial. It's like, okay, I don't like it, I don't want it, but I also engage with it.
Mm. It was never about a fight for me. That felt the wrong terminology. Mm-hmm. I read Robert Dilts's book, and it was very much, I had sort of like a little Pac-Man symbol, that sort of like little Pac-Man, and it was like, the cancer is part of me. It's not something I'm fighting, it's part of me. It's some errant cells, maybe. I know you said something about that came home to me as well.
So again,
adolescent cells.
Yeah, indeed. It's like you're not fighting your circumstances. Now, for some people, a kind of warrior stance may be part of how they galvanize themselves and empower themselves. Fine. If that is part of your hero's journey, then by all means, let that be the way you go. But for many people, it's not so much about fighting something as being bigger than that something. And that suddenly gives you entirely different possibilities. It does not mean it's all comfortable. That's not what happens. It's still scary. Mm. It's still uncertain. The big mistake sometimes I think people make is to assume that if they're confident, it's going to be a breeze. Water will just, you know, run off them like off duck's back. It's not going to be the case. You can be confident and scared. But you can be confident that you have what it takes to deal with what you're scared of.